a student at Abe Hubert, I got a student in high school. At the beginning of school, we give them a student handbook, correct? Well, how does that parent and student know? They know the rules at their school, but how do they know what the board rules are? Are they all intertwined?
Yeah, so at the beginning of the year, at least at our level, all our activities people were invited, all parents were invited to one of two different meetings. We had one in the fall, and I know some people don't participate in fall activities or athletics, and then we had one in the winter, and we went through board policy on this and eligibility and all that other stuff, but we also went through the athletic and activities handbook. So it was spelled out to them, both the board policy and the activities athletic handbook policy at our beginning of the year meeting and then at our winter meetings.
And Tim, for those kids not in activities, on the first day of school, we reviewed 7 components of our student handbook, one every hour. And this was specifically outlined for all kids in their 5th hour class on the first day of school. We walked through their student handbook one important section at a time, and we pulled out 7 really important things. And this was visited with all students on the first day of school.
We also, at the beginning of the year, we knew this was coming because of last year. We kind of saw the trend happening. BBS created a number of different videos explaining what the board policy was and outlining exactly how the board policy would be enforced. We also posted all over social media, Facebook, our webpage, all that stuff, exactly what the board policy laid out.
How long have you been doing reviewing the policy at the spring and winter meetings with the athletes and their parents?
This is actually the first year that we've implemented. We did, we kind of tied this in with, we started a peak performance group for activities and athletics, and we normally would do individual team meetings prior to the start of the season. I personally didn't think everything was getting covered that needed covered, so this was a way for us to, because we did know this was coming, this was a way for us to review all of this stuff with all the parents and all the students all at once, so they got the same message.
And it's not mandatory that they attend those.
No, it's not mandatory.
But it is mandatory that they sign off that they've
Received
understood a copy and got the policy.
What percentage of parents do you think made it to those?
It's hard telling. The first one, our attendance was, I think, 593 people in attendance. The winter one, because there's not as many activities and athletic sporting events going on, was less. It was still over 400. So not all of them are in attendance. It's just like anything, parent-teacher conferences or anything else. It just kind of depends.
When you say activities, that's all fall activities, football,
Band,
drama,
yep.
all those
Yep.
clubs and all that, right?
And that's those are the big ones.
And do you do more than one of those?
Yeah, we do 2 a year. One in the fall and one in the winter.
And are they, in the evenings or
Yeah,
Saturday?
6:30 at night and we just pick a day prior to the start of the season. For the fall one, we did a Thursday, the Thursday prior to the start of the season. Winter, we also did a Thursday, trying to stay off that Wednesday night.
I guess my concern is that maybe there's just some confusion between the kids and the parents on, what policy they're supposed to follow. And I know it's in black and white, but sometimes things get pretty confusing when you're trying to start school, especially if you're a freshman or a 6th grader. There's a lot going on. You're worried about, am I going to even be able to open my locker? And you guys are feeding me all this stuff every hour. And the parents are the same way. They work all day. They go to a meeting at 6:30, and they're trying to do the best as they can as a parent. And we have a lot of policies. And I think this is an important one. And I've said long ago that, this Juul stuff is way out of control. Everything you hear is it's out of control. And it's going to affect our kids for years to come. I just don't know. I appreciate what you guys are doing. Don't get me wrong. Maybe we need to do more on a smaller scale instead of, here's a policy, read it, sign it, okay, obey it, you know. And
I wouldn't quite say it was read it, sign it, and obey it.
Okay.
I mean, we spent quite a bit of time going through the policies. I stood up in front of all the parents and went through it wasn't just, here's
But
the
I'm,
paper.
yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you guys
Yeah.
have done a bad job. I'm just concerned of some confusion on what policy and all the guidelines and everything. The other part, you know, I really thought it was just a local problem. The kid can go to the quick shop and buy this, but you're saying they can buy it online, and, maybe we need to get our legislators involved and figure out, how can we stop some of this easy purchase of this stuff? Because it sounds like they can buy it pretty easily, and it's easy to light up and smoke, I guess, and I don't know much about it, just what I read and see on TV or in the news, and thank you for doing what you're doing. I just think we need to maybe, I don't want to say do more, but make it, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I know there's parents' concerns out there that, that they don't understand all the policies. I don't know if I do either, so.
I want to talk a little bit about policy, Tim, kind of to end it. We're not asking for any action tonight, but we do want you to consider some potential policy changes. The policy is all lumped together, tobacco, drugs, and alcohol, and has been through the state for a long time, the KSB. But what we would really like to do is separate tobacco from drugs and alcohol. We do believe those consequences for both should be the same and have those minimum standards, 0 to 3 days. But drugs and alcohol would be similar to our incidents that they follow you from year to year. They don't go away, like bullying, for example, that stays with your record year after year. We would like tobacco to be different, and every year in August, it starts anew, so those consequences don't accumulate in the same way. We'd also like to clear up the policy a little bit, so those student handbooks are a little easier to read and follow, a little more aligned with the language and such, and those are more clear. Again, we aren't asking for action tonight, but if you have a different direction than this, that could be a future discussion, and then we would like to draft a policy and perhaps bring it to you for the May board meeting and let you look over it for a first reading.
Second May board meeting.
Second May board
So we'll
meeting,
put this
sorry.
on the agenda next time
For discussion.
for discussion, and then based on the discussion tonight, based on the discussion next time, we'll take any direction you give us and include that in a draft that'll come out that second May board meeting, and then we'll ask for final approval in June, so we can get that in our handbooks for next year.
And again, I want to add, I think you guys have done a great job. I just think there's some things that we need to tweak. It sounds like you guys are doing that, and that's just based on what parents and students have told me. So.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. There's a lot there, and so that's what Renee's.
I mean, looking at the numbers, you've obviously done something the second semester to change the focus of it, so thank you for that.
So this Skyward program is, as I gather, relatively new or newer?
No, we've had it forever, but it aligns with state behavior codes. We have to report any out-of-school or in-school suspension is recorded consistently from every school in the state by a number. And so you have to code your discipline action to align with those state codes so they can track. Garden City had this many out-of-school suspensions related to drugs or weapons and whatnot.
How long have they required you to code according to the state definition?
As long as I've been here. Now, they change it and update it. For example, when bullying first came out, there were like 2 things for bullying, but now there's bullying physical, bullying verbal, bullying relational, and definitions for each of those. So, I mean, it's made very clear. Actually, the drugs, alcohol, and tobacco were fairly easy, other than they don't differentiate at this time opioids, but
So, of course, I haven't been around that long, but do you typically give an annual report that shows year-to-year comparisons of disciplinary actions for specific behaviors?
we do
there have been other reports too with regard to discipline too. Maybe not necessarily a statistical breakdown, but when we've talked about champs, when we've talked about truancy, there's been a lot of discussion about the issues that we're seeing through the information through Skyward, but maybe not a specific spreadsheet that gives
Not
each specific line of things, but it's what we're doing to combat what we are seeing through that report.
Correct. I know I've given bullying information before, but our principals dive into that every 9 weeks. A pretty good discussion on discipline data. And then they try to put their heads together on, I'm not seeing this trend, why, and you are, or vice versa. So.
On the data that's taken from kids that have these, do we ever look at, do those kids participate in extracurricular activities versus kids that aren't involved in extracurricular activities? Can we see information like that from what we input into Skyward?
We can. They're tracked in Skyward for the different activities they're in. I know we do it very easily on GPA, and I'm pretty sure we do it on discipline as well.
That'd be interesting.
What we'd have to do is we can data mine all that information and then go and line up when their referral happened compared to if they were in season at that time. It is possible, yeah.
That'd be great. And then I was actually wondering, or Mr. Penn, sorry,
No.
can you maybe just give me an example of how do we catch students off campus? Like what would be an example of how that happens?
An MIP, a possession of tobacco, ticket,
Okay,
those
so
sorts of
something
things.
that was ticketed or public or
Yes.
like that. Okay.
Yeah, and it does get, we have to do investigations just like anybody else. We get the photos from time to time, or the Snapchats or the videos or those kind of things, yeah. And then an investigation will happen and deem whether or not it's credible or not. Kids want to put everything on Snapchat.
Okay, so even if it's on social media, it gets publicized, then it's investigated?
Yes.
If it's reported.
If it's reported.
Okay.
And one thing that we've tried to do, we've tried to rebuild a relationship with our sheriff's department, police department. Tickets and those kind of things, we weren't necessarily, because they're juveniles, we don't necessarily have easy access to that information. And so sometimes that can be a little problematic and difficult because of their ages.
A lot of those things aren't going through court anymore either.
Yes.
Municipal court, they will, but if it's out in the county or if it's a misdemeanor, it's going to be going through an immediate intervention program through the 25th rather than it being a complaint like it used to be.
Yeah.
So.
And when that happens, it can be rather difficult to find information on that.
And then I'd be curious to see what the rest of the board thinks, but personally, I am a little bit apprehensive to separate all the tobacco from the drugs and alcohol for this whole purpose or this whole reason, maybe that it's illegal to purchase tobacco underage, is it not? And so it's all illegal.
But it's
So I'm not sure if the penalties should be separated out.
But the law separates it out. Tobacco is an infraction. So you're not going to be looking necessarily at anything more than a fine, especially if you're 18. You're not going to be put on probation. You're not going to be going to jail. If you are caught with marijuana, first time it's a Class B non-person misdemeanor, where you could potentially get up to 6 months in jail. So the law already separates these three things out with various penalties. I personally don't see a reason why we shouldn't be separating them out to a certain degree, since the law already does.
But do you think that the law has caught up with what's happening with jewels and juuling? Because they seem extremely dangerous. I mean, it's almost as dangerous as a drug.
Tobacco is a drug, and
Yeah,
it's
I know,
just
but
as
I'm just
dangerous.
saying
But that's
a
what that
jewel
juuling
is-
is. I mean, unless if it's the THC, in which case it's possession of marijuana.
Right. I'm just saying, has the law caught up with the current trends?
But it's tobacco, it's nicotine, it's the same thing.
And I might clarify a little, Dana, on I think the rationale from administration on separating them is KSB's current version now has two policies. our recommendation is really to keep the consequences the same for both categories. The only difference being, for tobacco, you basically, your 1, 2, 3 would start over each school year.
Right.
Whereas the drugs and alcohol would accumulate. So if you got a drug or alcohol offense as a 9th grader and you had the next one as a junior, you'd be on step 2 as a junior. Whereas if the same thing happened, if we went that route with tobacco, you'd be at step 1 your 9th grade year, and your junior year you'd be at step 1 again. Because I totally agree. I think the administration felt like we do need to take a strong stand on these. And both from the intervention standpoint and the consequence, because this is a really unhealthy decision when kids are making this choice, and nobody wants that. The parents don't want that for their kids. We don't want that, and we want to make sure that we're addressing all ends of it. But that was the rationale. It wasn't because we saw one as less really legal or a
dangerous, right, okay.
And we could live with it that way too. It could all be written in the same policy too. It
That's
just
why I
might
was
be.
curious to hear what other people thought, so, yeah.
And I forgot to clarify too, on one of the recommendations we were making is right now we have it by month, and we would like to change that to 30 days. Instead of 4 months, 120 days, because there are longer months than others and weekends fall differently, and so that's another change we would like to propose. Sorry, I left that out.
I guess my question with it would be, cognitively, if we don't have some sort of reset at some point, we've got a 5th grader who shows up with a bag from Big Brother at Stone's and then brings his own bag when he's a junior of stuff. So now we're on the second offense. The research that I've been presented lately, which was what was used to be supportive of the reason why we have a whole new juvenile justice code in this state, is that kids don't think 2 minutes ahead of time as to how this is going to impact them. And I don't know, I'm just putting this out there as food for thought, because I don't know where I'm going to land on this yet. But if we do that for all 3 of them, I guess is there a reset at some point? Okay, so they were stupid in 5th grade, we'll give them another bite of the apple in 7th grade. Okay, they were stupid in 8th grade, or now they're a junior, what are we going to do with them? Or some sort of reset like that. I guess I almost go back to when Henry, bit somebody in daycare, and they're like, okay, if he has another one, then he's going to be suspended for a day. Well, a month later, this 3-year-old bites another kid, and they're like, oh, that's the 2nd time. If it happens again, he's going to be suspended for a week. And then a month later, he bites a 3rd kid. Oh, well, he's suspended for a week. He's 3. He didn't know. But I mean, it's this kind of the same thing here. I mean, the 5th grader, the 7th grader, the high schooler, cognitively, can they appreciate what they did before and how it's going to impact them in the future? I don't know.
I think we gotta look at the feeding, what they're eating. They're now biting kids that much.
The one thing I will say is, in talking with people around the state, I travel probably as much as anybody. Everybody's dealing with this issue. Everybody's trying to decide, do we separate tobacco? Do we have a different policy for drugs, a different policy for alcohol, a different policy for tobacco? So what you guys are facing and what we're facing is the same thing the Manhattans and Junction Cities and Derbies and even Tribunes are facing. The one thing I will say is what we implemented this year with our intervention program is, in my opinion, and I went on a trip to go and research it and do all that stuff, it's the best program that high schools can implement and middle schools, with the teen intervene and going through the court system. And in my opinion, it's the best thing that schools are doing, and we're at the front of it.
With this consideration for a tweak.
Yeah, the program, the intervention program, the DAP program, drug alcohol prevention program, along with teen intervene, that the students go through if they've been caught doing this, and then the second step of it, the level 2 assessment, the program is the best program out there.
One last thing too, and the board policy in some places is somewhat vague, maybe not precise in everything. There certainly are some issues with understanding and communication of that, but predominantly, I think it's worked fairly well. And that's something to keep in mind is we probably don't want to get to the point that we're trying to define every drug and every, because, 2 years ago, who imagined about a Juul device? And I really want to compliment the high school and our middle schools and our intermediate centers on, when this thing came up in the fall, there were a lot of adults that had no idea what these things are. From your picture, if you saw this in your kid's room, you probably thought it was a jump drive for the computer. And so the campaign to raise awareness, not only among our kids about the dangers, but this was the first time a lot of our parents heard that information and heard about it. And I know Mr. Nordby shared several times in when they were dealing with parents that parents had no idea what this was or what these things were. And so our campaign to get that information out was, I think, really to their credit, really a public service, and because none of us want our kids making unhealthy choices. So we got to have that balance of we want to have the exact right policy, but we also want it to be flexible because 5 years from now there may be something else that's out there, and we don't want to have to be reactive and not able to deal with that because our language got too specific. So
is this information on the district website?
I think so. We, I know. I mean, we did posters and signs and our video, and I think it's out there, but I haven't looked at it myself.
I haven't been for a while, so I just.
But Amanda did a wonderful job on the materials with the campaign, and then the schools did a great job sharing that with families and students.
So, is this an ad hoc committee or a formal committee? Just one on the big list of things that each of the schools has to deal with?
Oh, I'd say we're extremely ad hoc. Yeah, but yeah.
Okay. Any more questions for them, board? Again, this is sort of a direction. Doesn't sound like there is I didn't hear any big questions to pursue some data on or anything other than to continue with what they're proposing. And so.
Just clarification, so Renee, you talked about you're working on changing some wording, is that right, or?
We'll be, they
Are
and
the
us, we'll be working
committee
on drafting
meeting?
a policy change with some wording changes, for example, days versus months. Maybe we'll draft one where it's separate and where it's not, but we do want the consistency of first offense is this minimum, second is this, et cetera. That works better.
So then, Dr. Carlin, you said that would be coming back to us at the next meeting?
So at our next meeting, we'll just have a follow-up discussion.
Okay.
If there's any additional information the board would like to provide or direction that the board wants to give us, then we'll develop a draft policy.
I got you, okay.
And that'll come your last meeting in May, and we'll ask for it to be approved at the meeting in June, so that it can go into effect, and the handbooks can go into effect
Okay.
next year.
Thanks.
It does seem like there's also some merit to, off to the side here, to think in terms of if there's anything in this process that we identify that we're sharing with most of the school districts in Kansas, to the extent there can be, I mean, I hate to go, you don't want to take anything to the legislature without the solution you think is there. But KASB had an approach in mind apparently when they made their division in their recommended policy. So I think we want to keep that in mind as well. What's best for our schools is what's best for our schools here at USD-457, our students. But if there's something there
we get information presented to us on academic performance, attendance, graduation. And I think this is a key component of how successful our school district is with regard to especially the social and emotional part of it. And yeah, I do remember seeing some of these numbers and different presentations, but it's hard for me to kind of put that all together. And it'd be nice to see the trends coming before you realize that it's become a huge issue. And I think specifically about opioids.
It's really tricky to do that. It's not impossible, but for another committee, I tried to run some discipline on in and out of school suspensions, and I looked at intermediate centers, middle schools, and 9th and 10th grade. And let me just throw out a neighboring district, for example. One of their middle schools had a whole bunch, the other none. So much of that comes down into consistency and reporting. We can get that information, but it's not always the best information.
How about the consistency of reporting within our school?
I think we're pretty good on drugs, alcohol, tobacco, where we have, we do a lot at the beginning of the year with principals on how to code, and there's always going to be some inconsistencies when you're talking about different behaviors like behavior other and things like that, but our drugs, alcohol, tobacco, bullying, physical fighting, those are pretty consistent.
I guess my original point though was just, I'd like to just hear your thoughts on whether or not that's the kind of report that should be in front of us or shouldn't be. It's too hard to put together. The data's inconsistent, reporting's inconsistent. Is there value in seeing that type of data? And I don't know the answer to that. I'd just like to hear from you about that type of reporting.
Do you guys have access to communities that care about that?
I did a report.
Yeah.
So that's good reading, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's, if, talk to her tonight, it's good stuff.
Okay, well, any other questions? Thank you so much for the information, and for a review of our policy and for the direction you're going. Look forward to the next meeting's conversations. I anticipate a little bit of, I know I for one, a little bit of research between now and then. But as I understand it, this is a huge national issue as well. So, and I feel for any parent and any student that finds themselves sort of caught. I mean, we all have to sort of answer for what we do. But still, I think our goal is education and a healthy experience, a safe environment for each individual student. I certainly appreciate, by the way, the Ramseys attending today. My heart goes out to that situation, to each of these where kids are making decisions and parents are having to deal with it. So I thank you for your efforts. I certainly recognize the Ramseys, and I think we've got an approach to trying to improve what we have in place. So thank you all for your efforts. And I look forward to next week's discussion, or next meeting's discussion. With that, I think we're done with that agenda item. New business, budget process and priorities.
Okay, so last week, the district site council finished up what was probably one of the main goals that we had for them this year, which was to help us with allocating and prioritizing some of the hopefully additional resources that we will have available for next year. So I'll give you that list and walk you through that here in just a little bit, but I kind of wanted to give you a little bit of background of how we got to that point where they were able to help us with that. The District Site Council is a group that was made up of, we had certified staff, classified staff, administrators, we had some community members, board members, parents, building representatives. I think I got everybody covered. Thanks Dana and Tim for being on that committee. And basically, they had 5 pretty intense meetings leading up to their final decisions. The first 3 were pretty much being fed through a fire hose for a lot of them, with tons of information as to the programs within the district, issues that the district faces, things our students face and have to deal with when it comes to learning, state board outcomes, pretty much everything that you've got, you know, the opportunity to learn in a year. We tried to cram it to them in a couple meetings. But then on the last 2 meetings, we did a different version of, I called it resource allocation. For those of you that have been around long enough or been lucky enough to participate in program budgeting, we took the good things that were from program budgeting and kind of put a twist on them and made them a little bit different. So back in the program budgeting days, a lot of that time was spent reducing budgets or fighting just to have the same budget that you had last year. So sometimes that had a little bit of a negative connotation for some people when it came to program budgeting. So that's the reason why I wanted to take some of the pieces that were good and kind of marry it a little bit differently, because this year we were actually getting to do something different. It's nice to be in a situation where you can say, hey, we might have some extra money. How would you like us to spend it? And so every program had the opportunity to present to the district site council. They were given the opportunity to present 3 requests, and those requests then basically were, here's how much money I want, here's what I'm going to spend it on, and here's how it aligns with board goals, budget priorities, state outcomes, all those things that are important in our decision making. And then at the end of the second meeting, the participants basically voted. There were 29 requests out of all the programs that we looked at. And when you look at the list that I'll show you here in a second, you'll see that there was $1.6 million, I believe, of requests. Oops. And we probably won't have $1.6 million to divvy out.
What?
I know, right?
That's why we hired you.
Well, I cannot grow that money tree fast enough. I'm trying really hard. But what's interesting to me as we listened to all those presentations was I don't think that we looked through a lot of them and felt like that's more of a want than a need. I mean, there are a lot of needs in the district. We spent a lot of years where we were really having to reduce things, remove programs, remove people. And so this is an opportunity to start adding some of those things back. So what you're looking at here is basically, I've given you the description of every program and the request that they made, how much it was, and a brief description of it. And I've ranked them for you in order as they came out with the votes. So it was a little interesting. I gave them coins. I tried to buy money is what I tried to do, and it's not going to work very well. I thought maybe that was the answer to our budget problems, but it wasn't. But they got to spend their coins on the things that they thought were important. So just like anything else, there's always more needs than we have money for. There were 29 requests totaling $1.6 million. I gave each individual 18 coins. So they couldn't even put money in each bucket. They had to decide where they wanted to spend their money. So it was a true life situation. You know, there's always more needs at your house than you have budget for. So any questions about anything that they have on here or that they asked for? I think it was a very interesting process. I think the site council was very attentive and involved. They asked tons of good questions. So it was just really exciting to have that many people involved in knowing what's going on with the district, and then having those people be able to go out into the community and be able to share some of that information.
Are they aware of the budget limitations?
Yes.
I'm just curious how you two thought the process went, and if you got any questions answered, or.
I didn't ask any questions.
Yeah, I'm sure. You need to push your nose in a little bit.
This is my first experience with it. It's, I thought it was really well thought out. The presentations were really good. I thought the coin way of voting was an innovative way of putting the does that list exactly reflect how I would have ranked things? No. But I'm very satisfied with the way the process was run and the opportunity for questions and the way that we were able to vote. I'm pretty supportive of how the process worked. I'm interested to see, I think the idea now is that there's going to have to be a line drawn.
Do you want to draw that line just to do what you
No,
want?
I don't. No, I don't. But there's going to have to be a line drawn, I suspect, someplace where if we funded it